Well, hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode. Tricia, how you doing?
Hey, how are you doing? I'm thawing out over here in Central Texas.
Yeah, I've been watching this on the news. I don't watch a lot of news, but I have seen or read a little bit on the BBC News website. It talks about how Texas has been a little bit cold recently. What's going on?
Yeah, we call it affectionately snowpocalypse. Yeah, we got a ton of snow and ice, and it was very exciting and not in a good way. At first, it was all fun and games. My dogs were frolicking in the snow, and it was very sweet. And then the next thing they're like, "Oh, we're going to do rolling blackouts, and we're going to turn off your power." We're like, "What?" Yeah, and then they started turning off power, and then lo and behold, they were like, "Oh yeah, we turned it off, but we can't get it to turn back on." Yeah. And houses here are definitely not built for any sort of winter event
Mhm.
because most of our year it's very warm. So, yeah, at one point I had ice on the inside of my windows,
Wow.
like on the frames, all the way around the frames. Yeah. So it was exciting. I was wrapping pipes with towels and oh man, I put cardboard up in my windows. My house, I'm sure, looked like so junky. And I have this huge oak tree in my front yard. I affectionately refer to her as Gertrude. And she's big, she's bold, she's beautiful. And then her limbs were hanging, touching the ground, right? Because of the ice, the weight of the ice. So Gertrude was no longer big, bold, nor beautiful. She was sad and pathetic looking, but it worked out okay. We finally have gotten back. So I've got electricity, as you can see. I've got water
Hmm.
because that also, there was problems with the water too because of the
Right.
pipes freezing and whatnot. Yeah. Yeah. It was exciting and not in the good way.
I think you've mentioned before that you had snow in Texas, and I thought, well, snow in Texas?
Mhm.
That doesn't make any sense. And
Very
then
rare. Used to be rare.
yeah, and then now, like you just had a ton of snow.
Mhm.
Like, my girlfriend and I were talking the other day about why we don't have air conditioners over here. I mean,
Mm.
some places, but the average residential home doesn't have air conditioning, which we don't need it because most of the time
Right.
it's not hot enough. But then for about 3 days a year, it's just really hot, and you just wish you had air conditioning. And you go to the States, when I come to Vegas and the casinos or the hotels or whatever, wherever you go, like that air conditioning is amazing. Then you step outside and it's like stepping
Right.
into an oven. But yeah, so it doesn't make too much sense. So it's like the same for you, but like the other way around.
Right.
Like you're not used to this. You're not. The state isn't built for cold snaps and cold weather.
And there are some competing factors, additional factors in that our state has not done the things that they need to do for our electrical grid. So Texas is on its own grid because they're like, we don't want no regulation. And because we don't have no regulation, they're able to make loads and loads of money, but they don't do the things that they need to do. So we had a situation about 10 years ago and it was the same exact thing. And at that time, they said, "Oh, you need to winterize this grid." And so they were like, "Oh, sure." And then nothing ever came of it. And so they didn't do that. And now what's super fun, we had gotten power, our power was on and off. And then ERCOT, that's who runs the grid. They came on the TV and they said, "Yeah, if you have power right now," because a lot of people didn't, but they were like, "If you have power right now and you're watching this, you better unplug everything. You better turn everything off. You better, because this grid is about to go down and it's not going to be back up for months."
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I was like, "Oh shit." So, pardon my French. I was like, "Oh my God, we just had the heat on." I was like, "Put it down, turn
Yeah.
everything down, unplug everything." Yeah. Now it was, so you can see, as I'm telling you, this is very dramatic. Today it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
obviously this probably had an effect on what you're working on at the moment. I
Mhm.
know, I don't know if the listeners do, and I don't know if you want to share it with them, but I know that you're working on some stuff behind the scenes. So
Oh yes.
the
Yes,
the
indeed.
weather must have affected that, because if you didn't have power, then you couldn't charge, you
Mhm.
couldn't use the computer, or if you're using the laptop or MacBook or whatever, you need it to charge, and if it runs out of juice, you can't recharge it. Yeah, how did you navigate that?
And you don't have internet either. I was going old school. So I have a pen and a paper, and I have my little note cards here that I was writing out. So I was able to do a little bit. But anyway, what you're referring to is I've got my 10-minute tilt cure, which
Oh,
is coming very soon. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to be first on the list to know what's good and what's coming, I guess there's two ways. Come over to my Facebook group, the Poker Mindset Mastery Lab. That would be good. Or you can go over to peakpokermindset.com and you can sign up for any of the free things that I have. And then because of that, you'd be on my email list, and then you'll get a notice when the 10-minute tilt cure comes out. So either way, and probably actually both would be ideal, I think.
Just to clarify, I saw your Facebook group the other day, and you have actually changed the name of it. So if people search, go ahead.
The URL.
Okay,
right?
Cool. So the link that we put in the description or underneath the video will get you there.
Yeah, it will get you there. Okay, yeah, sure. Speaking of Facebook groups, yours is hopping and popping lately, I've noticed.
Yeah, it's definitely more engaged, and I'm doing some Facebook Lives in there, and I just trying to do my best to help people out. They're in there because they want to learn about tournament poker, and I'm in there to help them and to see what they're struggling with, and if I can help in any way, that's my goal. So yeah, it's been fun, and it's been more, much more engaged group. And as I said, I've been doing some Facebook Lives. So I've been doing some hand histories. A student of mine actually finished second in the Millie a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
For 93,000. So we went through the final table there, went through a few key spots that I think that he could have maybe played differently. It's interesting because some of the feedback was like, oh, he just came second and won 93K. And yeah, here we are looking at the things that he could have done better. And I think that it's a fair assessment, but that's what we're about. So it doesn't matter like where you finish, like there are always going to be things to work on. And it's not a case of, oh, if you'd done these things, then you would have won. And heads up in this tournament is a PKO Millie. So it was like maybe 40 to 50K extra he could have won if he won the heads up. Doesn't mean, we're not saying, oh, if you'd done this, then you would have won. We'd say for next time, maybe look at these things. Gave him it was like pre-flop and post-flop stuff that we looked at. And he had some really horrible spots, to be honest, on this final table. So I think he did really well to navigate those and to finish second. So yeah, massive shout out to him for that. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that we're going through in the group, and you can follow along. So yeah, the link for that it'll be in the description for the podcast if you're listening, and it'll be underneath the video if you're watching.
I just wanted to follow up on what you were saying. And I think from both of our perspectives, we look at it as though with our coaching, it's not a one and done type of thing. It's a continuous improvement. So no matter how good you get or how far along you think you are, there's always, more you could do. And of course it gets more granular and you're looking at smaller and smaller things, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, are you ever really there? You're not. There's no there. So even though your student did really well, and that's fantastic, and that should definitely be savored, and you should celebrate and be happy about it. But you always want to go, okay, next time I find myself in this position, what can I do to increase the odds that maybe I can get the first place money instead of the second place money? So very well.
No, exactly. So have you got a question for us today, Tricia?
Let me call up my fully charged digital device here, because I snapped a little photo, and it was actually out of your group.
Okay.
This time, one of your group members, he asked a question about confidence in games, and I wanted to just bring it up and talk about it. Confidence in games. How do you keep it positive? Feels like I'm getting it in good and getting beaten time and time again. I know about swings, but wow, how long can you be in a downswing for? And we've talked a number of times about downswings, so I don't want to belabor that too much because there's plenty of previous episodes. And I have a whole course on that too, by the way, Escape from the Downswing Trap. The confidence part I wanted to talk about a little bit. And I know you answered him, and you actually hit on a lot of the important things, but I thought, you know what, this comes up a lot. And for our listeners, I want them to have the benefit if they miss this posting. So confidence. The first thing that I would say to people is you need to invest in cultivating your authentic confidence and not just trying to manufacture confidence. And I'll explain what I mean by that. To me, manufactured confidence is when you're looking in the mirror and you're doing that, like, I'm the greatest, I'm the best. Okay. One time, and this has been years ago, I went to one of those, I can't remember if it was a WPT boot camp or WSOP boot camp, but it was one of them. And this has been at least 10 years ago, probably more. But at the time, they had this guy. I don't even know if I should say his name because he's so horrible and nobody should ever look this guy up. But he was the mindset coach. He is not around. So I don't know what rock he's under, but he went away. Okay.
Okay.
But his lecture was, oh, stand up and just scream out like, I'm the greatest poker player in the world. I'm the greatest poker player in the world. Right. Now, I'm pretty sure I've told this story before because it just was so irritating. But to me, that's manufactured confidence. It's not real. I'm just like, I could scream out anything. I'm Beyonce. Okay. Right. I can scream it out. It's not real. Okay. So how do we get this authentic confidence, which I think is what your student and everybody who's listening really needs to think about? First thing, we're going to do just a little language lesson really fast. So confidence, if we look at the root of that, is kon, which means with trust or within intense trust. Okay, let's think about that for a minute. If we want confidence, what do we want to have intense trust in? Okay, ourselves, yes. But more importantly, we want to have intense trust with our process or systems, if you want to think of it that way. And I know you talked about that a little bit in your answer to him. You didn't exactly say it this way, but I knew this was what you meant. And you were telling him to continue to work on his game to make sure that the downswing wasn't affecting his decisions. So basically what you are saying is you need to work on your game to the extent that you have this confidence that you know what to do. Or I'd say if you're newer to the game, you're going to be like, but I don't know what to do. That's true. But you can say, I have confidence in myself that I'm going to make notes on this. And then I'm going to go find out what I needed to do, whether I get a coach or ask a question in the Facebook group, or I look up articles or podcasts, whatever the case may be. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about. Another thing that I think is directly tied into confidence and what I'm talking about that I don't hear that many people talking about is the concepts of willpower and discipline. So you need to have discipline and willpower if you expect to be confident. So we have to put in the work. We have to be very disciplined. Even when we're running bad, we're saying like, I think I'm doing everything right, but I am not getting the results that I want. But am I willing to be disciplined in my system and keep my willpower going to do these things? What do you think? Because I see you nodding your head. So obviously you must think that this is incredible advice.
Yeah, I do. So I think it's interesting because I've always thought, like, where does confidence come from? I actually put a question into my Facebook group today along the lines of, on a scale of 0 to 10, like, how confident do you feel in your poker game and why? And I just wanted to see how confident people were, but also to see where that confidence comes from. Does it come from their recent results? Does it come from the fact that they're working on the right kind of things? Does the lack of confidence come from the fact that they don't know what to work on? They don't know what the right things to work on are, or the fact that they're on a downswing. So I think it's really interesting. And I think that as much as I would like to say, okay, I'm really confident, I go into games feeling really confident that I'm working on the right things. For example, like the last time I was in Vegas, was the best my game has ever been, the most confident I'd ever been. I'd had several really nice scores online, went into playing in Vegas and was in very good position, like in terms of the mental game and the technical game. And yet at the end of the series, I felt like I didn't even know what I was doing anymore. I didn't know if I'm doing the right thing. Like I just lost a bit of confidence in that sense. Yeah. And so as much as we can say to ourselves, I'm going to just base confidence on what I'm working on and feeling more confident in lots of different spots. At the end of the day, if you've had a run of bad results or no results, as was the case in Vegas that time, then of course it's going to hit you. Like it's going to affect your confidence. So then you have to be aware of, okay, this is what's happened. Go back to the drawing board. Let's come back stronger next time. But I do think it's important to recognize where does that confidence come from?
I think what you're saying, I just want to interject this real quickly. What you're saying goes to the part I said about willpower, right? Because you're not feeling it. You're like, hell, I thought I did everything and then I got kicked in the head. It takes a tremendous amount of willpower, I think, to keep going, right? And say, okay, I'm going to keep working. So that's just all I wanted to throw in there.
Yeah, it's interesting because the poker gods, they don't care how much work you've done. They're
No.
not going, oh, you've done a lot more work than Bob over here. So basically, when you two get into a flip deep in a tournament, you're going to win it. Like, it just doesn't work like that, and they don't care. Obviously, like, the idea of poker gods is, woolly thinking, but I'm just trying to make light of it, really. But yeah, I think that sometimes you can have false confidence as well, which sometimes can lead to good things. Like, it is quite interesting how often people go on heaters.
Yeah.
And is it coincidence? Is it like, are we being fooled by randomness?
Yes.
Or is the end of episode?
Spoiler. Yes.
Or is it the fact that, oh, I've already won? So my student who finished second in the Millie, 3 or 4 days before, he won a 50-50 title for 25K. So he's already, I wonder how many spots he's played slightly differently because it doesn't matter if I lose this spot because I won 25K 3 days ago. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him about it. But I wonder how much of that happens. And sometimes, again, it is fooled by randomness. But if you take the more high variance line because you have already had a win a few days ago, and then you get there and you carry on through there, then almost like you set yourself up to have another deep run and things. Now, absolutely it is like fooled by randomness and things like that. But it is amazing when you hear so many people go on absolute tears for a few tournaments in a row, and then something, I don't know what happens, where it suddenly just drops off, but then it goes a bit. But is it like, do you get more confidence from the great runs, the wins and the deep runs that then lead on to better results because you're not playing too passively? Flip it on its head. If you're on a massive downswing, you're not going to be taking the high variance lines or the thin edges. Whereas you might do if you're on an upswing and you just had a really nice bink. So I think there's something in there, but yeah, I don't want to be fooled by randomness too much.
You know what? You're just like, with your words, you're like tickling my brain because you're making me think. Okay, I'm going to break something down. This is going to be good. Okay, you're going to like this. Okay, when we're running good, we go, okay, what hormones is the brain putting out? Hormones, neurotransmitters, things like that. Okay, when we're running good, we're going to get a spike in testosterone. That is going to make us more risk seeking. Therefore, we are likely to take riskier lines. But yeah, while a riskier line can blow up in our face, it also is going to have on the ups. If we do win, we're going to, win more, like everything being equal. Okay, when we're running bad, what's being pumped out is cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Okay, cortisol, we got all this going on. The amygdala is activated. We're going to be risk averse. We're going to play tighter. We're going to play more passively. So if you look at the neuropsychobiology of the whole deal, then you're going to see, okay, this is why when you go on a heater, you're just like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Maybe you're playing hands you wouldn't necessarily play, and maybe you're playing them harder, you're pushing them harder. Also, don't underestimate the fact that if your table mates have seen you or have some awareness that you've been winning, that also, there's something called the winner effect. If I take a mean beta fish and I put it, they do these experiments and they'll put it in with other mean beta fish and then that affects it a certain way. Whereas if they put it in with the wimpy fish, then it gets even more like big and bad when they put it back. So it's the same thing. I don't know. But to me, a lot of that does fall under that manufactured, but I'm not necessarily saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I just wanted to throw in a little bit of the science behind it. And then an asterisk, there was some talk in my group. It didn't have to do with this, but what I took from it, and I did want to ask you about this. A lot of people are very confident in something that is just plain wrong. Because in my group, there was talk about, I'm going to simplify this, but there was talk about how you should do your opens as you get further in the tournament. And you'll know what I'm talking about because you came in there, right?
Yeah.
And commented on that. And it was quite clear that there were certain people who believed that as the tournament goes on, I should open bigger. They were like, oh yeah, 3x, 3.5x? Hell no. I need to be opening this like 5x or something.
Yeah.
But what do you want to say
on that topic?
Yeah, the fact that they're confident in that.
Yeah.
But that's not right.
No, and I think that's what leads to many poker players massively overestimating their ability level.
I agree 100%.
But and it's also, you don't know what you don't know. So we're going back to thinking about what you should want to work on, what you should be working on, having that confidence. if you don't know that what you're doing is wrong, why you would think that you would have that false confidence that it was right, and you wouldn't be working on it. Whereas if somebody highlighted it, there's two ways it can go. One is you could be very defensive and say, no, I'm definitely right. Definitely want to go 5x deep in a tournament. Or you go, actually, wow, yeah, I realized that I'm wrong. But that's hard for some people. You know, I would say that, like, on the whole, the best people to work with when it comes to being a coach are those people who can say, yeah, okay, I can see that's wrong. I can, obviously, your job as a coach is to explain it in a way that, you know, helps them see it, that they're wrong, rather than just, that's wrong, you need to do this. Like, that's not very helpful. I think I've certainly worked with students who are just like, they're so defensive. It's, no, I did this because the small blind was like this and the big blind was going to do this. I'm like, okay, cool. And then you're just like, okay, but you don't need to be defensive. I think it's we talked about this. I want to say on like one of the first few episodes, we talked about the question why. It's like, oh, just tell me, like, so the way that I would phrase it would be like, oh, just tell me, why are you choosing that size rather than, so you could say to these, you know, players that believe they should open 5x, oh, just tell me why you want to go 5x here instead of 2x. And they're like, and they get really defensive, and then it's just like, and then so you think about, okay, what sort of other language could you use to ask the same question that's not going to make them feel like they're getting their back up and they're doing something wrong. So I almost need to, like, when I ask questions in lessons sometimes, to say, I'm not saying this is wrong, and I'm not trying to guide you down one path or the other. I just want you to show me and convince me that your thinking, you know, that your line is correct for whatever reason. What's your thinking here? What are your reasons for doing this? But yeah, I think that, yeah, as I said, like, I've worked with students who really struggle. They get very defensive, and you almost feel it's like growth mindset. Excuse me, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And like, it fixed, like, I know that I want to improve, but I'm not willing to do it. Like, or, you know, what I'm doing is right. Like, you're wrong. And I think you've got to, like, especially within poker, just be a little bit more open-minded. Have this growth mindset. Be like, do you know what? I might make a mistake. I think as poker players, we need to be way more humble. That we basically, in a lot of spots, don't have a clue, and we play very far from how a solver would play. So I think that we go, and this as an aside, or not an aside, but connected to what you were saying earlier, like, can affect confidence. You realize how much you don't know. The more you learn about poker, I feel like the more you realize that you don't know, and there's more to work on. So I think that, like, but we do have to be open-minded and just say, if you can articulate your reasons as to why you want to do something, then that, you know, that's absolutely fine. But if you're going to be defensive and not, at the very least, listen to someone else's ideas, then you're limiting your potential growth as a poker player. And yeah, we definitely don't want that.
What else I also noticed in that particular thread was that somebody had said, I don't know when, I'm assuming long ago and far away, that, okay, this is the way to play. You get late in a tournament, you open bigger. Yeah. Oh, okay, that's what I do. So, like, maybe it was even, and I don't know this to be true, but maybe it was a big name. Maybe Daniel Negreanu said this. I'm just making this up because I don't know. Or Doyle Brunson, I don't know. But maybe somebody like that said it, and people are like, oh, okay, that's what you do. And it's tattooed on the brain. This is what you do. So I think they almost have too much confidence sometimes in, oh, I heard this one time. Or maybe that was true in 2005, but we're not in 2005 anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like you have to be careful about putting too much stock into what any one coach is telling you sometimes. So that's just something, a little bit of a tangent, but I could tell in the thread of the group that somebody had given this advice and it was really taken to heart. And it was almost like it's not up for discussion.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there are some players who just, with certain parts of their game, are just not prepared to enter into a discussion about it. They're right, you're wrong. And we want to encourage them to explain why, and also to put an idea to them that they actually go, you know, compare the two ideas and think, oh, actually, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I'm still going to do this, but I can absolutely see why it might be better to do this. But also in terms of confidence, like, where are you getting that confidence from? So if you believe that you were supposed to 4x or 5x deep in a tournament, and it had worked because you'd won your last 3 tournaments or whatever, however you'd done that, well done, well played, then you were just going to carry on 4xing and 5xing because it worked, like, the last 3 tournaments. But yeah, I think, again, fooled by randomness. And if you carry on 3xing, 4xing, 5xing, like, deep in the tournament, it's probably not going to be the way to go. But I wonder as well, like, this is probably just something to end on. We don't even, maybe need to have an answer for this, but maybe it's something, food for thought, is that players who grew up outside of the internet age of poker maybe have a slightly different ideas about how the game should be played. And if you look at the previous books like Harrington on Hold'em, and the Phil Gordon books, and the books that came out around that time, the theory in those the theory in those books, very different from the books of today, Michael Acevedo's book,
right,
for example. So you've got these two things going against each other, and one is it's based on computers, how the computers are now playing, and one was really based on how experience and intuition, and this is what worked back in the, I don't know, 80s and 90s, but probably not going to work today. But if you've read one book, you're going to go with whatever you've like read most recently, probably, or one that you believe in. So definitely going off on a tangent here. But it's almost like cognitive bias as well. You seek out information that supports your belief system, like where you want it to go. So if you're really like me, I'm really into like theory and solvers and stuff like that, then I'm gonna, what's the word, not navigate, but
you use that as your lens to which you see the game and the world, right?
Yeah.
So like you have a bias, right?
Absolutely,
you have a bias towards that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the word I was looking for was gravitate. So gravitate towards the Acevedo book, rather than the Phil Gordon book or the Super System or something like that. Because of the way that I understand the game and the way that I learn the game. But if you start with, I don't know, Super System or Harrington on Hold'em, and then someone gives you Acevedo's book, gives you Acevedo's book, then you're going to be like, oh no, I'm not doing that. Min raising? Why would we min raise? You got to go 4x. You can't let anyone in too cheap, and you got to go bigger. And then so that's where it's all coming from.
And I know we were footnoting, so let's footnote the footnote. Okay. So when you open 2 or 2.2, whatever your standard open size is, and you do get called by 5 people in a live tournament, or maybe even online, you're just like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But you're not looking at the side that they probably aren't supposed to be in the hand. Like they were all making a mistake, but you're just looking at it like, oh, I made the mistake. Instead of saying, look at these dum-dums and how can I better take advantage of these dum-dums? And then you go, oh, the only way that I know, sorry if I'm not referring to any of our listeners as a dumb, but you don't want to be like, oh, I'm going to go contrary to what I should be doing because I don't want these people calling me. They're making mistakes. I thought the object of the game was to get them to make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The woolly thinking, you called it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really gets people in all kinds of trouble.
Certainly does. Lots of food for thought there. Let's wrap the episode up right there, Tricia. Where can people find you?
You can find me at peakpokermindset.com, or you can check out my Facebook group, which is the Poker Mindset Mastery Lab. How about you, Gareth? Where can they find you?
So similarly for me, guys, head on over to mttpokerschool.com and also check out my Facebook group, and the link will be in the show notes if you're listening, and the description of this video if you're watching. All right, Tricia, I'm glad that you're not snowed in anymore and the weather's looking a bit better. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you and everyone else out there. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, take care and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.